So, as I was saying, it's a give and a take. It's actually a form of evolution, believe it or not. Fearsome. It's like this. Let's say you come out with a product. Let's say it's substandard. For whatever reason. The reason doesn't matter. Let's say you come out with a substandard product. And it comes out and people buy it anyways because, maybe they were excited about it. Maybe they'd seen your previous works. Maybe it had some things that appealed to people. And word of mouth got out and more people see it and it was successful. Yay. So, word gets back to the people who are in charge of making decisions. I want to stress that's not the people who actually make the product. That's not you. The people who hold your leash get word about the fact that that was a financial success. If a bit of a critical, So they're like, why don't you go ahead and do the same thing, but do it easier, cheaper, simpler? Why not go ahead and try to put something out that's not as high of quality, because that'll be cheaper. So you put the next one out that's not of high quality. That goes out. People are excited about the first product, so they automatically buy the second product. The second product is another financial success. In fact, technically, and this is actually kind of a lie, it is more of a financial success because of the fact that it was cheaper to make, more net, if you will. Looks better on the quarterly reports. So that word gets back and they're like, we're onto something here. Why don't we push it? This will continue going right up until it reaches the point at which you have destroyed consumer confidence. Then one of two things can happen. They can say, oh, we're sorry, we'll do better next time, and then continue doing things like they normally do. EA has been doing that for about 20 years now. Or they could try to put actual money and work into one product, which is good, which people then go, and then there's that whole grudging, at least it was enjoyable, or this one, I know the previous ones were terrible, but this one was actually pretty good, that kind of a thing. Then you buy that new product, and then they start the cycle over again. Now, this is even more insidious when you have a situation that's actually worse. And I could point to the Transformers movie specifically. The first Transformers movie had basically everyone, and I mean everyone involved in the first Transformers movie, except for two people, were actually people who really cared and loved the Transformers series and really wanted to put out a really, really good movie. Okay? One of those people who didn't care about putting out a good movie was the director, by the way. But anyways, so it came out, and people were like, yeah, awesome, sold pretty well. They got the budget to go ahead and make the second movie. Here's the funny part. This can happen, this evolution, this natural back and forth can happen in different dynamics. For example, for those of you not aware, the second Transformer movie started filming before they had a script. I want to stress that's not a joke. They actually started filming without a script because of the screenwriters' strike that was happening when they were making it. So they started without a script, the strike ended, the screenwriters came back, and one of the worst screenwriters, the worst screenwriter in history, who I've actually used as a textbook example many, many times of bad writing, he came back, threw together a drivel piece of garbage movie for the script of Transformers 2, and then they filmed it. And once again, I want to stress, most of the other people involved in Transformers 2 actually wanted to put out a good movie. Most of the special effects team, most of the second unit team, even the director at that point, Michael Bay was like, okay, I get to really try this out. This is fun. I want to have fun with this now. But the script was garbage. Transformers 2 was a financial success. This is how this evolution thing kind of goes back and forth like this. Because thanks to random chance, something was successful, and they're like, well, that was successful. And there are people whose jobs it is to figure out why things were successful. Financially, of course. So they looked at that and said, okay, why don't I make Transformers 3? And this is how the script of Transformers 3 was drivel. And I'm just going to not say anything else. So and what I'm trying to say is Transformers 2 was an accidental flop, critically, but a financial success. Transformers 3 was a deliberate flop because it worked last time. You see how this works? This is why I call this evolution. For those of you not aware, evolution is basically a random chance thing happens that succeeds, and therefore happens again and succeeds and so forth, and that kind of continuing branching thing. That doesn't just apply to biology or anything like that. That can apply in many different aspects of society. So, yeah, this is why we have that gray sludge problem. Because there's another aspect to this, which again is evolution, which is actually much more insidious and much harder to explain. I'm going to do the best I can here to explain this, but it's kind of like this. The more... let's say a company puts out a video game. Let's talk about video games in particular. Video game comes out. Here's a video game. And it's Transformers 2, right? But it is financially successful for whatever reason. Again, it's that random chance thing, right? It doesn't matter why. It was financially successful. Now, this is true in most fields of entertainment, but especially in video games, all the money people who are in charge of this look at what all the other companies are doing right now, and they try to emulate. So anytime they see a success, people jump on that success in their own different ways, trying to figure out why it works. Here's the problem. One of the things I've often said on my show is I refuse to summarize. Now, I've thought about doing that. I've thought about being just another, here's a 15-minute discussion about a game. But the problem with that is Call of Duty. Let me explain. Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, was a masterpiece in my opinion. One of the best games ever made. Absolutely just brilliant. Brilliant single-player game, brilliant commentary, brilliant impact, brilliant emotion, brilliant presentation, brilliant directing, brilliant gameplay, brilliant style of gameplay, brilliant pace. It was an amazing game, and it was incredibly successful. And a lot of other companies looked at that game and Modern Warfare 2 and other games like it and said, okay. Oh, right. I know why that is. Hang on. Yeah, the sun has been weird today, so I had to switch it up. There you go. That should fix it. Thank you for letting me know. Anyways, so they look at that, and here's the thing. If you had a person like me sit down and say, this is why Call of Duty was successful, this is why Modern Warfare was successful, you would get like a 2 or 3 hour presentation about that. Because that's what it takes. Yeah, I know some of you have heard me talk about this before. This is the bullet point syndrome. I've talked about this before. They don't get someone to pontificate for 3 hours like I do in order to tell you all the details that I can. And I miss stuff. You know, for God's sakes. I miss stuff in my ruminations. The reason I keep recovering FF6 is because each time I have had more to talk about. There is so much to be ripped out of a thing, to really dissect and analyze from a thing, to try and figure out why it's successful. They don't do that. They bullet point. They look at Call of Duty and they say first-person shooter, multiplayer leveling system, and shock value. 3 bullet points. Now, these 3 bullet points are true, but without the meat of what each of these bullet points means, they are meaningless. It's like saying what made Star Wars successful. It's in space, it's got space magic, and special effects, you know? Good special effects. Again, these are true, but if you just made a movie which is in space with space magic and special effects, you're not going to make a good movie, because you have no idea why Star Wars was successful. You have bullet points. So, gaming in general in the last 20-ish years has been doing some ups and downs, but the reason for the gray paste problem that's been happening is because there are people who look at games that are successful and they bullet point it, and they make a new game based off of that, and that game, and I don't want to put this in an individual because that's not the point. It's more like 5 new games come out that are bullet pointed off of another successful game, okay? And then they're like, okay, let's make another 20 games based off of those 5 games. Now this is where it gets insidious, because the first game was great. Those 5 games are okay. But then people look at those 5 games and say those are successful. And so then they make bullet points off of the game that's already made of bullet points off of the original work. And now we've got 20 games that are below average. We're officially into the gray paste at this point. We're officially churning out works that is more designed to be... There's no nice way to say this. More like Titanfall. You remember how much hype there was about Titanfall? How many of you even remember Titanfall until I said that? Yeah, the Doom clones, the Call of Duty clones, the Battlefield 1942 clones, the Command and Conquer clones, the GTA clones, the World of Warcraft clones. Now the thing is, yeah, and that's another one. Dark Souls games and MOBAs are the two ones happening right now, right at this moment in life. See you around, Cloudy. Yes, I know I'm low on battery. Right now, at this moment in history, we've got the Dark Souls clones and we've got the MOBAs. MOBAs are finally starting to peter out, thank God. But, yeah, so my point is, this becomes the norm. When you have that's what the norm is defined by, the majority. When enough companies are doing bullet point syndrome and making these iterations off of iterations, and then the new thing tries something, and then there's iterations and iterations, and the new thing tries something. These iterations become the norm, and they're still financially successful because they weren't always this way. It's boiling a frog, okay? If this just happened, if all of a sudden back in, I don't know, 10 years ago, in 2005, or in 1996, or any of the other big gaming years, if all of a sudden just a ton of gray-paced games came out, just like that, no warning, no nothing, people would be like, oh, this is terrible. People wouldn't stand for it. People wouldn't buy it. Those games would be unsuccessful, and they would flop. And the companies making them would flop, and the industry would adjust appropriately. But that's not what's happened. It's been happening gradually. So people have been getting more and more and more used to the gray paste. So it gets to the point where it's like, well, I want to play something new, right? And here are my options. Gray paste A, gray paste C, gray paste D, gray paste B, you know. Those are my options now, so I'll pick that one. People are more accustomed to it because the water has been boiling slowly rather than a frog being dropped into boiling water. And that, right there, is exactly why it is at this point in time that games that come... that Witcher 3 is what should be the norm. And instead, it is the exception. Because the norm is the other thing. And it's not like... And it is worth noting that this... I'm not trying to say doom and gloom, as weird as this sounds. It's just become much more difficult to sort out the diamonds in the rough. Forgive me for the Disney reference. But there are still diamonds in the rough. There are still good games. There are still games that have quality. There are still games that are excellent. There are still games that are made with obvious passion and caring and effort. Statistically speaking, they are in the minority. That's why they're not the norm. But they still happen. In fact, it's actually kind of funny in an ironic sort of way, because if they didn't happen, this process would cease to exist. Every time a new game comes out that's good, that is successful, that's what starts that cycle over again. And other people are like, that was successful, bullet points, sludge. You with me? Of course there are people who have bullet-pointed Witcher 3. There's actually a game that's already come out that did. I can't remember what it's called right now. It was incredibly disinteresting. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What Tigzar and Lurker both just said are absolutely true. I just realized you don't see. So they pointed to two good expansions. Moonraker, which is a James Bond movie in space, because it came out in 1979. And Star Trek the Motion Picture, which came out because of Star Wars. It is worth noting that this is, of course, not always the case. There's no such thing as a writ law that applies to everything. For example, Star Trek the Motion Picture may have been a critical flop, but it was a financial success because it was Star Trek. That gave them enough money to make Star Trek 2, which, as I've talked about before, thanks to a dozen random variables, was an amazing film. Boom, completely revitalized Star Trek. So, it doesn't always work out badly. Just sometimes. Where's my... I need to see something. I need to write something now. 2 hours and 23... I'm going to push this up to YouTube. But so I need to get the timestamp here of where I am so I can try and figure out where it is. Yeah, I predict that as well, Zolwheel. Because... And yeah, what Lurker says is absolutely correct. This is also ignoring the many other problems in the industry, which I don't even want to go into right now. I mean, there's the we want to make all the money problem, which is a huge problem. There's the we want to take down an opponent's franchise, actual opposition kind of a thing, which has its own problems, especially in today's market. There's the we are stuck in the past problem, the dinosaur philosophy problem, aka we're still behaving as if this business is in the 1970s and it's 2016. There are a lot of other problems that contribute to this. But that's all I got, so we're going to cut this off for our YouTube guys.